This is Ron Langer at Grassroots TV, Aspen, Colorado. And I'm interviewing June R. Kirkwood, whose maiden name was Doris June Rew, R-E-W, while she was in the service. She served with the United States Navy Women's Reserve. Service dates 12/26/44 through 6/20/47. She was born in Pasadena, California on December 16th, 1924, and her highest rank was pharmacist mate, second class. So welcome.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about growing up in Southern California.
Well, it was a delightful place then. We could see the mountains. We don't see them anymore. I haven't been back for a number of years, but it was a pretty mellow place. We were kind of snobbish about the Hollywood people because Pasadena was, you know, superior. But in later years, I realized I was wrong when we did. We'll talk about the film that I worked on. But yeah, I had lots of friends, and it was a unique school system. It was a 6-4-4, they called it. First 6 years of school, and then 4 years in what now is called middle school, and then 4 years, last 2 years of high school, first 2 years of college. So it was kind of smooth because we got into that college thing without any big production.
So, and that was part of the public school system?
Yes.
Interesting. What did your parents do?
Well, my father lived at Lake Arrowhead, which was a mountain resort in Southern California, and my mother was in the Navy in World War II. World War I. I've got two on the brain.
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons that I joined the Navy, other than 4 other, you know, Coast Guard, Marines, Air Force. They called it the Air Corps then. But yeah.
So you wanted to follow in your mother's footsteps.
Yes. And one of my friends had gone in the Navy. So a lot of people were going in from college because it was that year, those years.
You had mentioned to me earlier that your father had immigrated from England and was basically an illegal immigrant.
But he wasn't an immigrant. He just moved here.
And so you weren't able to join up before the age of 20.
Yeah, with the British, because of one parent or two being born in Canada or England. So I had to wait. And my father, God love him, said the discipline will be good for you. Well, he had disciplined me very well, so it was a breeze.
So it was a piece of cake next to what discipline was like at home.
Yeah. Yeah, it was well ingrained. When they said something, Father said something, it was immediate. It was no, just a minute, I'm reading a book, or wait for the commercial or whatever, which weren't commercials then. But yeah, obedience we learned, so it fit right in with the Navy discipline.
And did you have brothers or sisters?
I had one brother. He was in the Air Corps. He took his life when he was 24.
Oh,
after he was out, yeah.
Where had he been stationed?
He was in Victorville, And he was also one of the Dakotas. I think he learned radio technician for planes.
Okay, so he wasn't sent overseas.
No, he wasn't.
He was younger than you.
2.5 years older.
Older. Okay. Had well, you said that one of the reasons you chose the Navy was because of your mother's World War I experience. What did she tell you about her experience during World War I?
Well, not a whole lot. You know, after your parents have gone, you think of all the things you wish you'd ask them about. But I don't know why she joined, because of the war, like everyone. But she was what's called a yeomanette, which meant paperwork like the yeoman of today. And she had been to business college. And she was stationed in Vallejo, where she met my father. And I have a couple of pictures of her, one in her uniform in the backyard. And I can't remember if she had any rate or not. It's a rate for enlisted, not rank.
Right.
And then I have an old picture of her in the, well, before 1920, marching down the street in Alhambra where she was living. She was the only female in the
Veterans Day Parade?
Yeah. They called it something else. Memorial Day. They didn't call it Veterans Day in those days.
Yeah, actually, Veterans Day was Armistice Day then, wasn't
Yes,
it?
Armistice.
Yeah.
That was the one in November.
Right.
Yeah.
The 11th day of the 11th month at the 11th hour.
Yes.
Right.
Good memory.
World War I. Let's talk about your Navy experience then. Where did you do your basic training?
Hunter College in the Bronx in New York. It was my first trip east, and it was quite an experience. And of course, it was December, so it was very cold. And we wore these old rayon stockings, because that's all we were able to get then. And we lived in apartments. There were, I think, 5 stories. There were quite a few of them up on the hill from the college. And we marched at, excuse me, at 6 in the morning with the wind blowing across the, what was the water called?
The Hudson River.
No, yeah, maybe it was. But it was mighty cold, mighty cold. But it was an interesting experience. We learned to identify different airplanes. And I don't know what else we learned. We learned protocol. I can remember, yes. We welcome you, you new recruits, parlez-vous. How do you like your hats and boots, parlez-vous? Our boots were shoes. Must have been for the men. And when we went to get our uniform, they said, don't tell them what size shoe you wear, they'll tell you. And I wore a 4.5, and they gave me a size 6, because they were sure every time you marched more every day, your feet would get larger. Mine didn't, but it was all right. And then I can remember passing an officer, and I forgot to salute. And he said, it's customary, young lady. I don't know what he called me. This is a salute your officers. I said, thank you, sir, and went on my way. But it was fun.
Did your uniform have skirts or trousers?
Oh, skirts. Yeah. They probably were wool, too.
But that made it chillier as well.
Yes. But yeah, it was such an honor. You know, looking back, it's so many years. 60 years ago, is it that many?
Longer than that.
Longer than that.
63.
Yeah. It was pretty exciting, and meeting new people, new girls from different parts of the country was great. And then we had a choice, not much of a choice, in '44 of where we would be stationed. because so much was close to the end of the war, and there were so many openings, billets, that weren't available. So I wanted to go into air travel of some kind, control tower operator or something, but there were none available. So I went into the hospital corps, which was apparently my love anyway, and I was sent to Bethesda, Maryland, to corps school, hospital corps school. And
what did they teach you there?
oh, the basics. How to take a temperature, blood pressure, you know, all the nursing arts skills. Because we weren't going to do a lot, but, you know, the RNs were officers. And I have an interesting story if you want to hear it.
Yes, please.
I was stationed eventually in Long Beach Naval Hospital. And I was, this was the second time around, I was in the dependents unit, which were the families and the children, wives of personnel. And right next door to our room, where we saw the patients, the doctors slept. Well, there was one doctor that has left his soiled socks in the closet, which was creating quite a unpleasant odor. So I washed them in tincture of green soap. And of course he complained to the commander. And she called me and that was simply disgusting. I washed them, hung out to dry, you know, so we didn't have to smell the odor anymore. And she said, would you go into a stranger's house and wash his socks? And of course that took me unawares. I said, well, no. But anyway, everybody else was appreciative. That was my big faux pas that I remember.
But the job got done.
The job got done. He might have got the message that he didn't leave many days worn socks around in the closet for everybody else to unenjoy.
Right, right. So any other stories come to mind from that period of time?
Well, I loved being stationed in Long Beach because it was close to home. And I would hitchhike up to Pasadena to see the family, usually with another girl. But, you know, you felt so safe then, in uniform. And people were kind and friendly. And I got where I was going. And after corps school, I was sent to Long Beach Naval Hospital. And I remember it was Ward C3, it was the orthopedics. And what was interesting, they wouldn't have the waves give the boys that were patients bedpans. We could give them urinals, but they didn't want us to give them bedpans. And it's so, in retrospect, how much has changed, you know. Even in nursing school, from in the late 40s, early 50s, it's a lot different now than it was then. But
it was a stronger sense of propriety.
yes, I would say so.
Yeah.
It had to protect the little waves. Well, from there, I was, one of my friends worked in the necropsy. Do you know what that is?
Necropsy.
No, I'm not going to put you on the spot. No,
pathology?
It was the death literature that you had to type up.
Oh, okay.
So I did that for a few weeks while she was on leave, and learned, for one thing, that these young corpsmen that had died, and we were doing the report on them after their autopsy, was that they had arthritis already in their early 20s. You know, you learn a lot about a person's health when you have to type up their autopsy. Yeah. But then from there was an opening in what they called it wasn't the emergency room, it was, well, right now I'm not clicking, So
okay.
I can't remember what it was called, but I will. It'll come to me. So it was admitting ward. Admitting. So I enjoyed doing that. And the doctors, God love them, the interns, who were V12s. You heard of V12s?
Mm-mm.
Well, they were in med school, and then they took over. The Navy took their education over, as it were, and they had to put so many years in the Navy in exchange for doing
their education.
Yes. So they taught me how to suture, and I loved it. And I was ready to go to med school after, but this one intern said, "June, you don't want to be a doctor. There's no women doctors." People get a kick out of that. You should go into nursing. But anyway, that's how it ended. But the war was over, and they had discharged too quickly too many yeomen. So they took every wave out of every station in the country that could type. Well, my typing ability was 23 words per minute. Wasn't very impressive. But anyway, they caught me on that. And so then when I got back to D.C., and they asked me if I could type, I said no, and then I was put in an idiot job.
What was that?
Well, it was Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, which had its good points. We had weekends off. We had lots of free tickets to the USO and trips to New York. Even a officer's, a general's airplane, as well as free on the trains. But if I lose my sense of what I was going to tell you, where were we?
You said it was an idiot job.
Oh, yes. Well, there were little things called HC3 cards. They were really papers.
Yeah.
And it had stamped on them whatever was happening to that particular uniformed enlisted person. And we had to look up their names in the files, and there were hundreds, thousands, and to pull out the jacket and stamp whatever has happened to them, whether they were sick or sick bay or whether they were being discharged or whatever. And then we had to file it back. So we did have to know the alphabet, which fortunately I did.
Which fortunately you did.
But you know, it came to me that it was an idiot job. There were the numbers for not Social Security. What do you call people that work for?
You're talking about serial numbers, military
No.
serial numbers?
No, it was. Anyway, their classification was 2 was the lowest, and 10 was the highest. And so many of these older ladies were 2s, which meant they didn't have a lot of, green stuff.
So you're talking about grade level in the...
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
okay.
It is a civilian thing. But so I pulled a psycho. I started cutting out paper dolls. And this commander, who was our head honcho, a delightful gentleman, 2 of his sons he lost in the Navy, enlisted. He'd come up through the ranks, Commander Dennis. He called me into his office and said, "Rue," we were our last name.
Yeah.
"We don't like to see our little waves unhappy. What's the matter?" I said, "I want to go back to a hospital." And he said, "Well, where would you like to go back to Long Beach?" I said, "Yes." So I got an upgrade. I didn't have to take another test. I went from pharmacist 3rd class to pharmacist 2nd class, just by shipping over for 6 months. You know the term shipping over?
You mean extending your time?
Yes. Yes. So I not only was sent back to Long Beach, I got a 2-week leave on the way. So I went through Chicago, which was kind of interesting because the last time I'd been there was Christmas Eve when we were sent back to D.C. It must have been 45 or 46. So anyway, I was sent to wherever I wanted to go. So after Chicago, I went to Minnesota, where my mother's family was, where she was raised. Got to see the lakes and all of that sort of thing, and the family's hardware store. And then I went to Denver. You know Denver.
Yes, I know Denver.
I had a friend there, Jerry Hyatt, his name was, who was going to pre-med at DU. And I stopped to see him, and I said, when I get out, this was in the spring, I'm debating whether to go to Sun Valley or Aspen. And he said, oh, go to Aspen. And he told me he was raised here and was taught skiing in the 30s by a famous name, Andre Roche. And he said, besides, in Sun Valley, they don't let the employees fraternize with the guests. And some of the guests were from Ivy Leagues and drove in their convertibles, but that was their protocol. Anyway, so I did choose Aspen.
So you came to Aspen after your discharge then? Or did you go up to Aspen during that leave?
No, I came after I was discharged.
We've used the term WAVES a number of times. What does WAVES stand for?
We always got a kick out of it, how they dug up the letters to make WAVES. And it was Women's Accepted Voluntary Emergency Service. That sort of covers the subject.
Yeah, but you're right. They really had to dig far to get a acronym that fit women in the Navy.
Yeah, yeah, it was very good.
Another thing that you had mentioned earlier, when you were training at Hunter College, you had sung for me a little ditty that you used to march to. Would you be willing to share a little bit of that?
Well, you know, and I'm thinking of another one, and it was sung in conjunction with the Navy's Acres Away. Somebody had very cleverly written it to harmonize. Waves of the Navy, there's a ship sailing down the sea. And I won't sing it, I'll just say it. And it won't come into port again until that victory day. Carry on for that gallant ship, and for their heroes brave, who will find a shore, their man-sized shore was done by a Navy wave. But it was really a beautiful, harmonious song. Now, what was the other one? You don't you don't remember?
No, I'm absolutely tune deaf.
Well, my tune isn't very good. It'll come to me.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll pop in.
So let's move ahead then to discharge and when you came to Aspen.
I have to go back for a minute. When I was taking the streetcar from Pasadena to Los Angeles to sign up for the waves and had our shots and all the info they needed, I was worried as I crossed the street on the railroad tracks or the streetcar tracks that I'd be hit by a car before I could get to the place of enlistment. I mean, that's how much I wanted to go. And when I was discharged, I cried. Captain Hightower was our CO for the dependents unit. He was a OBGYN. He kissed me on the forehead, and we said goodbye. But I really, you know, I loved it. It's a kind of a bilateral thing. You love being there, and you love the people, and you love the work, but it's time to move on.
So, was there an opportunity for women to remain in the Navy at that time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I could have. Stupidly, I didn't keep the insurance. I mean, I was only 22 when I was discharged. I wasn't very bright. Looking back, I think I was really not bright at all. Working double shifts in the Navy was okay. You didn't have to get permission. You just had to be there and help when you could. And we had ships brought in, you know, through Long Beach Harbor of men, hundreds of them, wearing their tags around the neck, telling what, whoops, I'm fiddling with that. Telling what injury they had and what treatment they had. And
these were men coming in from the Pacific War.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, back to Aspen. I attribute Aspen to very wonderful things in my life. I mean, I've lived here longer than any other place, and I came back in, well, first it was 47, 48, in the fall. I had driven with my friend Jerry, excuse me.
Do you need a break?
No.
No.
To New York to see the Wurzel twins in Canada. They were Olympic racers. And
Olympic ski racers?
yes. And we ended up because Jerry had injured his, he had a fracture that was serious. And in those days, they thought hydrotherapy was good, and they only did it in New York. So I ran into an old ski buddy, that her name was Patricia Burton then. Pat Rogers, her father had been a general or an admiral or something, and she was one of our ski buddies, and she had a beautiful voice. And so she wanted me to stay in New York. She could get me a job singing in the road show.
You want to take that lozenge again?
In the road show of Oklahoma. Or a job with the Powers models. I wanted to come back to Aspen. I mean, I hadn't been here yet, but my car was in Denver. And I drove over. It vapor locked, had to be towed. It was a little 37 Ford that my brother had bequeathed to me. And I put everything in it. Skis, boots, poles, tennis racket, ironing board, iron, skates, ice skates. I don't want to diddle with that.
So had you learned to ski in California?
Oh, yeah. 36, 37. That year we had, I was going to school at Lake Arrowhead, and we had 140 inches, 48 inches of snow that winter, which was tremendous, because Arrowhead, maybe I should take a break and just get this coughing out of the way.
Okay, why don't we stop for 5 minutes? Okay.
So where were we?
Well, we were talking about learning to ski in 1936-37 in Sun Valley.
No, Lake Arrowhead.
Lake Arrowhead, okay.
And then Snow Valley was the
Snow
closest.
Valley, okay.
Yeah, and it hadn't developed into a ski resort yet. We had to hike.
So what kind of equipment did you use in those days?
It's primitive. Wooden skis, too long, no edges, and bindings. We didn't have long thongs or laniers. I don't know how we kept them on. Dick said something about maybe rubber from a tire, you know. But anyway, I liked it because if you run along fast and it's time to get out, you just step out. You don't have to fall and do the binding thing.
Well, that's convenient.
Yeah, it was. But we were taught by a couple of Norwegians, and it's strange to say, one of them, Johnny Elverum, started the Snow Valley Resort. I think he's gone on to the next life. But I saw him out here, and I didn't know that he was in the 10th mountain. And so that was very, very interesting to see him. But
well, it was a shame that you didn't have the opportunity to join the 10th Mountain Division.
yes, wouldn't that have been a trip?
Yeah.
Yes, no, I was happy in the Navy. Yes, it's navy blue is the color for you. We took our hue from the red, white, and blue. We looked at the sacks that they wear in the wax. We don't envy the green of the lady Marines. And you can bet we're wearing the proudest smile, smartest shade when we take our place in the victory parade. So step right in line. You look mighty fine in your navy, N-A-V-Y blue. And sometimes I sing off key, but I remember it and I love it. Thank you, thank you.
That's great.
I don't know if they're still doing that, singing songs. But music is pretty magical.
So anything else that you can share with us about learning to ski back in those early
36,
days?
37. Well, we had a race with the kids from Big Bear, which was about 30 miles from us. Mm-hmm. And we all had to hike up the hill to run down the hill. I don't think I did very well then, but in later years I raced. I was always a Class C racer. I wasn't great. But, you know, I had friends that were Class A racers that would push me along and say, oh, June, you've got to race. It's just so much fun. So once that Dick spoke of Kratka Ridge, there was a race there that was put on by the Douglas, you know, the plane manufacturers.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What was it?
Douglas.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I won the race, but it was a socked-in day, mm-hmm. and people would say, over here, June, over here. You're not supposed to speak to the skiers when they're racing, but it was flat light. It was really.
So you couldn't see the gates.
No. So I won, and I'm sorry that I still don't have my medal from the award. But I didn't do very well after that. I did do a race when I was living here in it was February 48. I was working at the Red Onion, and there was a race in Jackson Hole. So I went up with a couple of guys. And in those days, you had to pack up the course, and you had to walk the course, so you get a good line. There wasn't none of this riding on the lift stuff. And the lift in Jackson Hole was very rickety, very scary. And it was cold, like now.
Yeah.
But anyway, I remember a few of the girls that were racing. Mm-hmm. But
so let's bring you back to then when you first came to Aspen in
in the fall of 47.
How big was Aspen then? What was it like?
It was delightful. I found the same day I came almost, I found a place to live next to Steve Knowlton. My friend Jerry told me to look him up, and there was a room, and it was one of 10% of the homes that had indoor plumbing. So you get an idea. And I lived there for a couple of months, and I worked at a place called the Roaring Fork Inn. And it was kind of a greasy spoon. And I remember very well so many people, the racers from DU would come and eat when we were having races. Donnie, Elisha, Paul, and Nate Wagaman, and a man that married Jackie Reddish, Dick Movitz, old ski racers from those early years that went on to do well. But and then I had an opportunity to work at the Red Onion. One of the girls that used to eat breakfast with us, she'd always leave more for a tip than her breakfast cost. That's how reasonable things were in those days. But Aspen was a special place. Everybody knew everybody, and we didn't care what their education or their background was.
So a very accepting place.
Yes. And I had a couple of friends that they were from Portland, Maine, with that accent, you know. And Joe and Sally McNeilis, they were also racers Sally fractured her ankle 3 times that winter. Anyway, they said you've got to wear black if you're going to be fast, because black is a fast color. So we all had to wear black pants and black jackets. And our shoes were miserable, our boots. I worked for a long time to get a pair of Bali boots that were lace up, of course. They were cold and uncomfortable. But, and people said, if you can ski Aspen Mountain, you can ski anywhere. Well, there wasn't much to it then, but it was wonderful. And you know, I learned what a real ski bum was. We speak of ski bums today. Ski bums were people that will work any job, anywhere, anytime, in order to ski every day. So I was.
So you were a ski bum?
I was a ski bum, and I still have some of that leftover mentality. Even though I haven't skied since '86. I mean, I put in 50 good years of skiing, but the knees gave up, and I had them removed and new ones put in. And
So how long did you stay in Aspen at that time? You moved out to go to school, right?
Yes. Well, I met some students spring break, living at the 4th place I lived. It was called the Prince Albert. And they said, "Oh, June, you've got 4 years coming on the GI Bill. Why don't you go back to school?" And I got tired of saying, when people said, "Oh, where did you go to school?" "I just had 2 years." Poor me. So, you know, they said, "You get in the summer, then in the fall you're an old student." So I applied. They took all my courses.
They took your credits?
My credits. And I got in the summer.
Into what university?
Into the University of Colorado.
Okay.
I asked if they had degrees in nursing, and he said yes. So I was very happy to get in and have that. So the first 6 months I was in Boulder, and then the nursing was in the hospital for the last 3 years.
At University Hospital down in Denver.
That's what they call it now.
Yeah. What sort of nursing specialty did you do?
Well, it was just general overall nursing to get a degree. And my favorite was psychiatry. And I ended up, the last few years of nursing were in public health, which I didn't like at all in nursing training, but I loved it at Orange County Health Department. And I graduated from just being visiting people's homes, and I realized when somebody had written middle class home, I said, "We're not middle class home. Those people might be. That's not middle class." So it was a very, very great education. The other thing that happened here, well, I met my husband to be here. He was driving a dog team for Stuart Mace at Toklat, and he proposed the first night we met. We were married 6 weeks later, and
so I can understand why he would propose the first night, but why did you accept?
I didn't. I said, "You've had too much to drink." But well, that's an interesting question. It was time. I was 27, and I swore that if I didn't find somebody by the time I was 25, I would be a nun. Sisters of the Sick Poor. They were nursing sisters who took care of the poor in Denver.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't have to go that far. My favorite job, nursing, it was one of the, this is kind of choppy, I know.
Okay.
Maybe you can edit it. Was at National Jewish Hospital. We were there as students for three months, and then there was an opening, and I was going to go around the world and take my father to the, not around the world, but to Norway to the Olympics. But I loved working at National Jewish so much that we didn't do that.
So I want to bring you back to the to your marriage. You married a dog sled driver, and after only 6 weeks,
Yes.
and you felt that it was well past time for you to be married. So,
I guess so.
So you did that, and what happened with the dog sleds? Did you get involved in that too?
Yes, sure did. That was another wonderful experience. Bill wanted me to meet Stuart and Isabel and the dogs. So Christmas vacation, which was wonderful at DU because as nurses they closed down the infirmary, so we had all the off days that the students did, the holidays.
And they had a nice long break.
Yes.
At DU.
So we went up to Toklat and met Stuart and Isabel, and Bill and Stuart conferred, and then they conferred with both of us, and they wanted a couple. They had just had Bill, and he knew very little about things he learned from Stuart, like building the A-frame up in Ashcroft, above Ashcroft. But so we accepted, and we went back, and I resigned my position at DU, and they were very anxious for us to get there because Life magazine, a man by the name of George Silk, was photographing a snow picnic with a beautiful Swedish girl that they wanted to use the dogs. So that was the first thing we had to engage in, and then.
And what year was this?
52.
Okay.
And then first Universal Studio came because they wanted to use the dogs in a film. They decided to use Sun Valley instead. And then Paramount came. They were doing a film called Redheads from Seattle. They were going to call it Sisters from Seattle, but it had a connotation of sisters. So they did the Redheads, and there were some well-known people. Agnes Moorehead, Jean Barry. Anyway, they did decide on us, and they spent six weeks filming on location with the dogs. And then they went back, and Stuart was in touch with the directors and the producers, and he talked them into maintaining continuity that we would take the dogs out there. So Stuart and Bill...
Take the dogs out?
To Hollywood.
To Hollywood, okay.
We took 37 dogs in 2 trucks. And it was quite... And Isabel and I went along as professional dog handlers, where I'd been there a couple of months. I wasn't real good, but they made snow every morning for the scenes in Alaska. And we had to be at the end of when the snow stopped, to help turn the dogs around. Otherwise, they would have a little trouble.
Little argument.
Little argument. They did. I mean, they're all in the same kennels. They should have been friends.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what's going on in the world. All the Muslims should be praying together. But anyway, so that was a great experience. We lived on the lot for 6 weeks. And I was pregnant with Chris at the time. And I was the only one that was fortunate enough to have a bicycle, so I could ride from one. We had an apartment, and they provided everything we needed, I wanted to live. And it was, I wish the film showed more. It was going to be the first 3D color musical, because Teresa Brewer, Jean Barry, quite a few singers were in it. And
those were the days when 3D was just coming out.
Big hot, yeah. Well, and nobody could bother putting on these glasses. But one of the
I remember right around that time that I saw House of Wax with Vincent Price. That was the first 3D horror film, and it gave me nightmares for years.
Oh, I bet. Well, the lead's husband was, they were looking for him in Alaska. That's how they got up there. He was owned a newspaper, and he was putting the buzz on a couple of guys that were being illegal in Alaska. I don't know whether it's Anchorage or Fairbanks, but anyway, they had this old-fashioned then printer, and the pages would be coming out at the audience with the 3D. Well, of course, that sort of fell flat when they didn't do it in 3D, but it was a fun experience. Isabel and I were paid $25 a day, and the boys, for saying "ha" to the dogs, were paid $100 a day because they were speaking. But that was a great experience. Another one.
Were you involved in any other films?
Well, lately, Aspen Extreme. Did you see that?
No, no.
Oh, well, you must look it up and see it. I was a maid, a nanny or something. I poured coffee.
Oh, I see. That was a film that was made up
Patrick Hasberg made it up here, yeah. Yeah, you haven't seen it? Oh, well.
It's just one of the many deprivations of my life.
Well, I'm sure you'll look it up now. They do show it on TV once in a while.
Okay.
But,
I'll look for it.
Yeah.
So after Hollywood, you came back to...
And the dogs had dog hepatitis, and we had to give them shots for a couple of weeks.
Which you could do fine as a nurse.
Yes, and of course Stuart and Bill held the dogs as I shot them in the hip. We had to give them shots twice a day. That was an interesting thing, but we had wonderful people that were our guests. And Stuart and Isabel were fantastic people. I mean, you never find anyone working harder.
So when you came back to Colorado, then did you remain on this dog sled ranch?
Oh, and no, at Toklat?
Yeah.
No, I came here. That was 53 to 55. I had 4 more children. Did my nursing stuff when they got a little older, and Bill was working for the state, and then I became single in 71 or 2. I brought my children here. We you know, I knew what the whole scene was, and so we rented a quasi motorhome, and I told them they had to earn their money for their lift tickets, and I'd take care of the food and the transportation. So we stayed here for about a week in the early 70s.
Living out of the motorhome?
Yes. It was Christmas vacation. They were all still in high school.
Yeah.
But that was a fun experience too, because nobody wanted us to park on their street. But anyway, 74 came along, and it was just the opposite of 47. Isn't that interesting? I just realized that a few months ago. And I was nursing at the hospital in the emergency room. And there was actually, when I first got here, there was an ad in the paper for a health food store, you know, employee or interest. And I called up the first night and came down, and it was just my cup of tea, because my daughter Karen was still in California. So I called her and said, "Hey, you want to be a partner in a health food store?" And we'd already talked about it for years. And so that's when that started.
And what was the name of the store?
Well, it was called the Pitkin County Granary. And actually, I understand that granary is the word instead of granary. But anyway, our little spot in back was called the Little Kitchen. And it was a vegetarian for the first year, and then it became also macrobiotic, which a lot of people don't know about and don't care about. But we were ahead of our time. And we were much loved and appreciated because we served good, wholesome food. And then my partner, that was a friend of Dick's, came along because she wanted to heal herself of bone cancer, eating well, macrobiotics. And so another friend, mutual friend, Michael Kinsley, called me one night and said, Nina has bone cancer and she's supposed to go to Denver for chemo and radiation. We don't want her to go, do we? I said, no. Do you have anything she can read? I said, oh, yes. Well, by the grace of God, she had a fever, so she couldn't go down the next day anyway. Mm-hmm. So she became my partner and realized we needed a larger place, so we moved to where Sukasa is now, across from the Wheeler Opera House. Mm-hmm. And so we did that together and for another 3 years until she took her trip to the next world. And it's again, we were ahead of our time. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't keep it going without her because financially she bailed us out in the off seasons. But I still have people. Just the other day, June, I wish you still had the little kitchen. Uh-huh. But it was definitely worthwhile, and I learned a lot.
Uh-huh. And is that when you got involved in public television with your health-related show?
Well, actually, it was after. Uh-huh. Because I was putting in 12 to 16 hours a day in the restaurant, 12 days.
When you had the restaurant, yeah.
Yeah. No, it was after. After Nina departed, I realized I couldn't keep it going, and Milan offered to buy it. He said, don't sell anything else. I was having a big sale. I want to buy everything. So I was like the monkey off my back. I mean, 7 years and 12, 16, 18 hours a day was... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the restaurant business is a brutal business.
It is, but I loved it. And Nina and I went around the world together. We were going to go just Japan, and then she called me from her office and said, June, you know, for a few dollars more, we could go around the world. And we did. We went around the world standby, and of course went to Japan. And it was another wonderful experience.
Hey, how long did you take to do that trip?
We were only 5.5 weeks. But it was our friends kept the place going, and we didn't fold. And then, you know, when we were folding, or when I was, a man that was running a pizza thing, he said, "Oh, you don't have to close. Just do what I do: borrow the money for off season, then pay it back when you start opening again." But I was ready. Mm-hmm. But I had other jobs. I had a nanny job, and I cooked at a place called the WWII Foundation in California. It was a retreat for spiritual, educational, and I did a couple of vision quests to the Southwest, cooking, and then they talked me into going to WWII because they had a 12-burner gas stove, and that was wonderful. But when the mice started, during the day, little mice running across the stove, and then the rabbits ate our beautiful garden and of herbs and vegetables, it was time to move on.
Tell me about the TV show that you did.
Oh, well, there was a man by the name of Wayne. He was the direct manager, and I can't remember his last name. Mm-hmm. And he won me in, I guess it was '86, to do a health show. And so I was involved with a multi-level marketing thing, not real seriously, but it was called High Level Wellness. And so we named it High Level Wellness, A Conscious Choice. And at first I had to call people to be on, and I had a friend, Linda Lydell, who we would interview somebody, and then she couldn't do it anymore, so panicky, I did it alone. But we had doctors, legal, and we had crystal gazers and crystal healers, and we...
So both conventional medicine and counterculture.
Yeah. And then we would have people who had written books who wanted to be on, or who were going to have a retreat. the following weekend or in a couple of weeks and wanted the exposure.
Right.
So it was very educational. I mean, I didn't plan anything. When I look at Oprah and Barbara Walters and people like that, you know, they plan ahead. And I just knew what they did, I called it, what's your main claim to fame? No, I didn't really say that, but I thought about it. But it was pretty educational, you know, and it was spontaneous. And we didn't have to have a, what do you call it, sponsor? No, they just did it. And it was quite fun. And I went through about 4 or more different managers. There was, well, besides Wayne, there was a guy, last name was Harding. He's a musician.
You've had a very adventurous life.
Yes.
You've done a lot of different things. Is there any any philosophy or attitude that that's kind of guided you along the way?
Well, I had an accident. My daughter and I were driving to California and the car flipped. And when I was recovering from the fracture and the burns, I came up with what are we here for? To love and be loved. And the other thing is just being kind to people. One of the famous people said we just have to be kind to each other. And I think that's the most important thing. Because the more you give, the more you get. People have been very good to me. And since I'm older and hobbling with the knees and the heart and stuff like that, people have been so wonderful that I've never seen before. Even, I think, tourists. You know, June, can I help you? And they don't know my name.
Yeah.
Can I help you with your basket, or can I help you put your groceries away? I mean, the kindness of people here is just, I could never leave. I don't think I could ever leave. It's just a wonderful place.
You truly love this town.
I do. And you know, in spite of all the monkey business that's going on, and the tiring thing about the entrance to Aspen, will it be this way or that way? I just love it. You know, people are good and they're kind. And I'm ready to go any time to the next level. That's what my partner Nina said. I'm just moving on to the next level. But just enjoy every moment while you can, because it's precious.
How do you understand that journey to the next level?
How do I understand it?
Yeah.
Oh,
what kind of sense do you make out of it?
Well, I think we all go on to another plane, and it makes sense to think that way instead of this is all there is. Because I've lost my mother, my father, my brother, and quite a few guys from World War II, and friends in the later years here. And I just don't like to think of them as never seeing them again.
So it's
a spiritual thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I was raised an Episcopalian. I converted to Catholicism. I fell away. I went back, fell away again, where I am now. And when I was at Ojai, many spiritual type people were giving retreats, and the one that appealed to me most was Pir Vilayat Khan. He's passed on, head of the Sufi order in the West. And Sufism makes sense to me. The only requirement to be initiated was do no illegal drugs and work for the unity of all faiths. And that made sense. I said, I can do that.
Yeah.
Not that I'm actively working for the unity, but I'm not downgrading anybody. And the Native Americans say, honor all paths. And that this is my ongoing philosophy, that all paths are worthy of consideration, and people are doing what they think is right, and that's the way it goes.
You've taken a very hopeful and optimistic attitude toward life, and it sounds like it served you well.
Yes. Yes, I think so. I think so.
How is your life? How is your life changed by your time in the Navy?
Oh, well, you know, it hadn't changed until later years. You know, of course, I appreciated getting my education. I was able to...
The GI Bill.
The GI Bill. And the VA taking care of me and knowing that, I mean, I have, you know, Medicare and Medicaid and all that stuff. But I could go to the VA hospital if I needed to, or a VA home for the indigent aged. But, you know, it's knowing that it's out there and that we're being... The only problem I have with is the paralyzed vets and the veterans that, you know, that aren't being cared for. That bothers me about that our government isn't caring for them. Our government isn't taking care of the Native Americans. But what can I do? There's a saying, I'm going to write 4 books. I keep talking about it. But one of his quotes, I wondered why somebody didn't do something. And then I realized I was somebody. Yeah, we got to do it.
Yeah. What's your attitude towards war at this point, having seen the results of war during your time in the Navy, and then your experience over the rest of your life?
Well, I've become a pacifist. I don't go out and wave flags or placards, but I feel that there's got to be another way. And I know wars have been going on since the beginning of time, and I think it's nuts. But there's got to be another, more diplomatic way of handling. I mean, look at how many thousands of years we've been doing this. It's insane. Someone's got to come along who's gonna get it together. I mean, I have a friend who's a senator. I took care of his grandson for a number of years, and he's a major player in this. No, even though he's a Republican. No more wars. Do not send 200,000 troops. Is that the right?
21,000.
21,000. To bring them home in bags? No.
And what do you think the alternative is to resolving differences among countries? If you have a country that's going to be aggressive towards other countries, how do you handle it as a pacifist?
Respect. Respect for where other people are coming from, and try to talk to them. That's all I can think of. But no more killing.
Yeah.
That doesn't solve anything. You know, it reminds me of a couple of kids with their snowballs and their little forts they've built, and they're throwing snowballs at each other. This one goes, this one. It's just back and forth. There's no sense to it. Will we ever learn? What do you think?
Well, you were part of a war effort that was absolutely necessary to prevent the world from being taken over by some very, very evil people. Do you think that we shouldn't have fought in World War II?
Doesn't look like it. I mean, we had to.
Yeah.
And it's brutal. And I think the Nagasaki and Hiroshima are just tragic. but I don't have an answer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's the kind of question that that a pacifist must answer. What do you do as a last resort?
Bury your head in the sand. Follow Gandhi or Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
You know. I think one of the other things I have is envision the consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know as we're envisioning the consequences of what we're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
This is not being a happy situation.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know.
And there is a difference between being opposed to this war or some specific war versus being opposed to any war.
Yes. Yes. Well, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the answer.
Yeah, yeah. In listening to you, though, it sounds like what you're talking about is a hope for an evolution of mankind to a different level,
Yes.
where differences can be resolved in better ways than
Yes.
what's happening now. I mean,
Yes.
that seems to be the gist of
Yes.
what you're saying.
Yes. Well, another thing I have is it's called the 20, whatever it is, but communicate and cooperate are part of this 20 things that and this compassion, a lot of them start with C's.
Mm-hmm.
I call it my C list. And I think it's workable for a family, for a relationship, for school, for the military. And we've got to be flexible. We've got to be cooperative. We've got to be respectful.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I guess it'll never happen. I hate to say that. Because there is this element that's up for blood and guts, you know? Mm-hmm. How do you deal with people that are killing people that they don't even know? I mean, our men are doing the same thing. And our women, God help us. I cannot see women with arms. It does not make sense to me at all. Will we ever get over it?
Well, I certainly hope so.
Well, I'm looking at it too from a spiritual point of view. And everyone's going on to the next level anyway.
Yes.
So,
right.
Why sweat
ready or not?
Ready or not, why sweat the small stuff?
Exactly.
It's not all small stuff, but we can call it that.
Anything else that that we should talk about before we bring the interview to a close?
Well, it's your show, Ron. No, I think we've covered a lot, and I'll think of something as soon as I go out the door. But no, it's been. I'm very grateful for my life and the things I've done, the friends I've made, places I've been. It's just an attitude of gratitude that carries me on. I'm grateful for my children. I'm grateful for my ex-husband, who's very kind to us now. Not that he wasn't, but I mean, we've all made it through somehow.
Well, speaking with you has been very inspiring. I've really enjoyed it. And I'd like to thank you for having this conversation with me today, and thank you also for your service to the country.
Oh, it was an honor. Thanks, Ron. It's been fun.
Yeah.